So, I thought I wouldn't be making any more Unearthed Arcana videos, or at least for a while. I was wrong. There's more. There's some interesting stuff in here that I'm going to get to, but first I gotta say, these are optional rules. These are not going to be specific changes made to the classes, so even if it is put into a book right now, I would be fine with it. I might consider buying it. There's gotta be more stuff in the book, obviously, but these are optional rules. The DM is free to allow or disallow certain things according as he will, or her will. I'm just, thinking of myself because there are some that I would allow, some that I wouldn't allow. Some I think need to be tossed out entirely and shouldn't be things. But since there's so much stuff, I'm gonna just kind of focus on the stuff that I want. So here is the list of timestamps and things. I'm gonna get to the Ranger. I'm gonna focus on them a lot because I've been working on a Ranger, and I've been starting to make videos about my rework of the Ranger, so it's relevant and it's pretty interesting. So the big thing, the one I teased in the thumbnail, is the fact that spell versatility, the ability to basically switch out one spell every long rest, and it's given to basically all of the all of the casters. The only exceptions would be the subclass casters like Eldritch Knight and Arcane Trickster. Those don't get them, but I think if this spell versatility were to go out as a class feature, they'd probably get some love in that direction as well. So to be clear, spell versatility of a more powerful sort has been in D&D for a while. Cleric and the Paladin, I think, are the ones they get to choose. Maybe also it's the Bard. Anyways, the idea is they get to choose what spells they wish at the beginning of the day, and they spend some time preparing, so praying to their god and meditating. Usually what happens is players just keep the stuff they have other times, but it is an option to switch up your spells if you need something specific. That ability, however, in a more limited form, you can only switch out one thing after long rests. That's being given to all casters except for the wizard, which already has it, and I have big problems with it. Namely because, as again mentioned in the thumbnail, it destroys the wizard's primary feature. Like, the wizard doesn't get many features. Yes, it is a spellcaster, but so are like 5 other classes, and they got all their cool stuff. Clerics get Channel Divinity, Bards get Bardic Inspiration, Wizards get regaining half their level in spell slots, and the ability to prepare a certain number of spells from their spellbook. But with the spell versatility being a thing that is potentially open to all classes, Wizards' big thing, the ability to be really versatile, is completely undercut. It has already been undercut by the Cleric, being able to do that, but with no gold cost for extra spells, and basically their entire spell list being open. But for the most part, it was kind of a special thing of the wizard. Now, it's actually a detriment to the wizard. Whereas other people, they can just choose from their spell list willy-nilly. Wizards get a specific number of them, and if they want to get more, they have to pay for it, and quite a bit of gold in that sense. So, I don't like spell versatility. Yes, I get the idea you switch out your spells for specific missions, but again, wizard, that's supposed to be a feature of the wizard. That's one of the reasons you play a wizard or a cleric, but you play the wizard to be the arcane caster that has a lot of versatility. With like sorcerers, you have the few spells that you choose, but you are really good at using them, and with warlocks, you have a few spells to cast, and then you have, I guess, nothing. But anyways, wizards are getting the short end of the stick here. I really hope spell versatility doesn't become a thing, because then all those poor wizard players. Another thing I'm going to complain about is the Blessed Strike. It's a replacement of the cleric's Divine Smite and Potent Spellcasting, which is either a D8 and later a 2D8, or to weapon attacks, or add your Wisdom modifier to your cantrip damage. Now, Blessed Strike is basically you can add a D8 to any of your spells, not just your cantrips, but any of your spells and any of your attacks, unless I'm reading it wrong, but I think I'm not. There's more versatility. Versatility isn't a bad thing, it's just I liked having this is a more martial domain. If you follow this, you're going to be more on the front line, and here's your use for that. Whereas you're more of a magic, more of a backline. Here is your spells. You can be better with the spells. I know some of them, like poison or fire, are very resistancy, but I guess I like better having, poison for the trickery. They're more thematic, the damage types, even if they are having to deal with resistances. And the other one I'm going to criticize before we move on to the ranger stuff is the monk weapons, the alteration of the monk weapons. And all I can say about this is that it's really going to give the Kensei a hard time making itself cool. I mean, yes, the monk weapons is restricted to just ones you're proficient in, so like, you know, your elvish weapon training or your dwarven weapon training. But I feel like it's taking away from the Kensei monk the coolness of it. Specifically, you have to take this archetype to be the monk with the sword, whereas anything else, you're just a monk who has fists. Nothing wrong with that, they've done a bunch of cool stuff with fists. But the Kensei was supposed to be the one monk archetype that can use the martial weapons, but this allows all archetypes to use the weapons. So yeah, I don't like that. And now let's move on to the ranger, and let me just say, the ranger has got a lot of stuff going on. There's a reason some people are calling this the variant ranger, similar to the revised rangers, which actually I think is a ranger revised. But anyways, yeah, there's a lot of overhauls, so we're going to talk about that. The first thing is Deft Explorer, which is a replacement of Natural Explorer. I like this, the kind of the feat progression. You're gonna get all of them, but you know, most people, they hang around in the tier 1 because after that campaigns tend to fall apart, at least in my experience. So you're really only gonna use 1 or 2 for the majority of campaigns, but you know, you get all of them, so it's not a bad thing, and all of them are pretty cool and interesting. I like them. I prefer my reworked version of the Natural Explorer, but that's because I've worked on it. And I don't want that one to go to waste as well, because I've had to revise some other stuff looking back at my revision. But, you know, stay tuned for that. It'll be on the iCards if I ever remember, and when I post the videos. And, you know, when I make a video talking about that particular revision of the Natural Explorer, that'll be up in the iCards. But if it isn't, feel free to yell at me in the comments below. So with Favored Foe, they're trying to give you a damage output to your favorite enemy and also expanding it more. I do have thoughts about that, but that's going to have to wait till I make a video. All I'm going to say about this feature is that if you integrate Hunter's Mark into the class itself, then I'd say you just, you know, rewrite it as a class feature. Don't deal with, it's a spell, but you don't have to do material components or spell slot or concentration. Just make it a, hey, you have this ability, you can mark somebody and it'll last for X amount of time. And such. And one thing that caught me by surprise is the spellcasting focus. I was very concerned. I thought this was like part of the base class. It seems like something that you would definitely have with the base class. But let's move on. And with the fighting style, you gotta remember that the 2+2 cantrips is an option, it's not a given. So all rangers are not getting +2 cantrips. It's just they're getting an option to choose cantrips if they want. They can also get it from other places and still keep their fighting style. This is more of, if you want to be a ranger where your primary attack is like Produce Flame or something, then this is the way to go. So Primeval Awareness, I really like this feature. It's a different take on the one with nature and aware of nature, the concept of that, but it's more complex, and the revised Rangers version and my version are outclass it in some other ways. But if a player wants to have more of this nitty-gritty, having, hey, I can have this specific locate animals, locate objects, locate plants, then I'd be willing to just give them this instead of the Primeval Awareness. It'd be just as a choice of how do you want to express this idea of I am one with nature, I'm aware of what's going on within it. So with Fade Away, it's a solid alternative to the +10 to stealth by covering yourself in mud. You know, this is more movement in combat, whereas the other one is lying in wait for an ambush. With different playstyles, I could see this as a viable option. This is very, very similar to the gnome racial feature Fade Away. You know, again, same name, it's similar concept, invisible for a turn. I don't think that's a bad thing, I'm just pointing it out, hey, these are very similar. It's a thing to be aware of. And the last thing I do before I go, I'm going to talk about those Beastmaster options, the Beast of Air and Beast of Earth. Some people were getting confused. Daffy Chappie, I know, was very weirded out by this stuff. It's very non-thematic. I mean, yes, it's air and earth, but you don't get a sense of what it is in your mind. I see these as simultaneously a simplification of the Beastmaster abilities, although I'd still add in the, you know, more increases to proficiency and such. But this is a simplification of, hey, here is laid out how health is going to work. Here is laid out how you're going to be able to command the creature. And I also see these things as sort of replacement for the stats of creatures, like a hawk or a dog in terms of hit points and armor class and attack. they're not that great, even with buffs from your proficiency bonus. I see these as you can take, base hawk stats, or you can replace it with these stats. It's still a hawk, it's just this specific trained kind of hawk thing. Like I said, there are a lot of different options in this I haven't covered, and I'm not going to cover all of them. Just want to cover the ones that I wanted to talk about. So if there are ones that you think is going to have a mechanical impact on the game, or at least something that's overpowered or underpowered or something like that, put it in the comments. I'd love to, talk with you about these rules. I really like getting into rules and things in this channel, so if that's something that interests you, then please consider subscribing.